We call them museums, but that's a euphemism. It might be better to call them warehouses of stolen loot.
Hi everyone, my name is Tsabita Nuha Zahidah with student number 1232410 and 95. And this podcast is actually part of my final project on Western Cultural Civilization course. And a few days ago, I actually watched a video recommended by the lecturers by Faiz Asia called Why Some Museums Are Filled with Stolen Objects. And that video really opened my eye to something that I hadn't really thought much about before. And that is how museums came to own the object they display. So I decided to explore this topic further, not just repeating what the video says, but actually doing my own research on other real museum cases that raise questions about their ownership, their power, and whose story get told, just like the video that I watched. So yeah, let's start with the first museum that I found, that is the Louvre Museum in Paris. I hope I pronounced that right. So that is one of the most visited museum in the world. People from all over travel to see things like the Mona Lisa, ancient Greek statue, and Egyptian artifacts. But here's the thing. A huge portion of the Louvre's Egyptian collection was acquired during France's colonial occupation of Egypt in the 18th and 19th century. And while some were gifted under questionable agreement, many were actually taken during excavation without the local consent. And according to the Art newspaper, Egypt has formally requested to return of the Rosetta Stone, currently held in the British Museum, and several other major artifacts, which many have been in the Louvre. So far, not much has actually changed. And the power imbalance between the museum and the community is pretty clear. So the museum decided what to keep and how to display it to the mass, while the source community have to request their own history back. It made me wonder, isn't that really unfair? So now let's take a look at something closer to our home in Indonesia. It is still in Asia, and I came across the case of Khoisan. I hope I also pronounced that right. So, Khoisan human remains that were kept in the collection of the University of Vienna. These remains that were kept in the collection are taken during the colonial period from South Africa, where Khoisan people were among the first indigenous group to be studied, or more accurately, scientifically identified by European scientists. So, according to a 2021 report by the International Council of Museums, these remains were used in racial classification study during the 19th century. So, the research promote European superiority, and today their descendants are still fighting for proper repatriation and respectful treatment for their ancestors. And this issue isn't just historical, it's happening right now. The Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. has received dozens of formal repatriation requests from Native American tribes in recent years. And these include ceremonial items, burial objects, and sacred artifacts that were taken without permission. Sometimes, even during religious ceremony in 1990, the U.S. passed the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act to address this. But this progress have been painfully slow. And according to the U.S. Department of the Interior's 2023 review, over 80,000 Native American human remains are still being held in museum collection across their country. And what's becoming more obvious to me is that museums aren't just neutral spaces that hold history. They are institutions that decided whose history get told, how it's told to the mass, and what part get left out. And as Dan Hicks say in his book, The British Museum, the violence of colonialism didn't end when the objects were taken. It continues every day. They remain on display without contact or consent. So, what should museum do? I think the answers start with transparency and collaboration. Some museums are beginning to work with community to co-curate exhibits, meaning the source culture help decide how their objects are sold. A great example is the National Museum of Australia, which has launched a collaborative program with Aboriginal elders to reinterpret objects taken during colonization. Rather than just displaying them with a simple label, the elders provide story, context, and cultural meaning. And according to a 2020 case study from the Journal of Museum Anthropology, this project didn't just improve the exhibit, it helped rebuild a relationship and trust. And another example is from Germany in 2022, the Berlin Ethnological Museum officially returned over 500 artifacts to Nigeria, including sacred bronze from the Kingdom of Benin. What made this return different was that it was done with public acknowledgement of colonial violence. Not in silence, not in private, it was symbolic and meaningful. And this shows that restitution isn't just about giving things back, it's about accountability. It's about museum admitting, yes, this was taken unfairly, and then doing something to fix it. So, what does this all mean for us as visitors, students, and future decision makers? It means we have to be curious. When we walk through a museum, we should ask, where does this come from? Who made it? And who might want it back? It also means we should support the effort of community asking for their heritage to be returned. Because history isn't just about preservation, it's also about power. And as long as museums hold onto objects taken without consent, they're also holding onto that power. And to wrap this segment up, I want to say that this project has changed how I see museums. And yes, they are important. Yes, they did preserve our culture, other people's culture, but they also have a responsibility, big one, not just to the history, but to the people behind that history as well. And thank you for listening. I'm Tsabita Nuha Zahidah with once again student number 123241095, and I hope this podcast encourage you to think more critically the next time you visit a museum. Goodbye.